Hey guys, what's going on? Laying back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about Code 8 Part 2. Code 8 Part 2 is a Canadian sci-fi movie that serves as a sequel to the previous Code 8. Its story takes place 5 years after the previous movie and continues the story of Connor, who works as a janitor at a Lincoln City youth center in an attempt to reinvent his life after getting out of prison when he comes across a little girl. This girl, named Bhavani, narrowly escaped death at the hands of a robotic canine unit controlled by a corrupt police officer after it had killed her brother. Connor decides to escort the girl out of Lincoln City with the help of his former partner in crime, Garrett, while attempting to unveil a conspiracy in the LCPD. I was excited to see this movie because I'm Canadian and it's the first ever 100% Canadian Netflix original I've seen, but it turned out to be unremarkable. It's not terrible by any means, it can be fun in parts, but it looks, sounds, and plays out like just about every other sci-fi action flick out there. Connor doesn't have much more depth than he did in the previous movie. In fact, I think he has a bit less depth this time around. At least in the first movie, his relationship with his mother gave him more to work with, but here he doesn't have much going for him other than him wanting to live an honest life. Now, I do like that idea and how he tries to find new meaning in his life by saving a little girl because he couldn't save his own mother, but it's executed in the most bland way possible. He's just another bodyguard character on a typical escort mission. Robbie Amell does a good job with his performance where he can, but his character arc is just meh. The other important character, Garrett, who's played by his cousin Stephen Amell, isn't much different in terms of quality either. His anti-hero role in the story, with how he juggles between helping Connor and the corrupt police, is amusing at times, but basically he's just a more gruff version of Connor. Not good, but not bad either. I wish I could say more about these characters, but that's pretty much it. They're little more than cookie-cutter templates to help push the story along to wherever it needs to go. The interactions between Connor and Garrett are alright, but they don't save the movie from its mediocrity. Even the villain feels completely half-baked in approach. This Sergeant King guy doesn't do much aside from wanting to keep his crime under wraps and get a cut of money from Garrett in exchange for allowing him to commit whatever shady stuff he wants in his district. And that's it. Again, like Connor and Garrett, his actor is competent in the role, and there is potential for him to escalate things and see how his corruption grows beyond the one murder he commits, but the movie never commits to it. He's another template among other templates. The story is just as bland as the characters. Like I said about Connor earlier, it's just a bog-standard escort mission where Connor has to escape the city with Bhavani to safety. There's nothing inherently wrong with it in concept, but it plays out pretty much exactly the way one would expect. It jumps from one plot point to another without any substance behind any of them. It has the typical beats of Connor bonding with the girl and trying to outrun people on their trail, and it just goes back and forth between them until they reach the conclusion. Once in a while, Garrett will shake things up a bit, but that's about it. It just feels too safe for me to bother caring about it all that much, and that's when it even gets going. The movie takes a long time to kick off with its premise, which makes it worse when it turns out so average after building all that anticipation. And it's a shame because the movie is excellent in how it capitalizes on certain things regarding its premise. For example, I still think the setting, much like the first movie, is a breath of fresh air with how it goes about conveying a dystopian atmosphere, but being much more subtle about it compared to other sci-fi flicks. Seeing this movie portray a more realistic version of the future by taking modern day environments and simply putting robots into them is a surprisingly enjoyable concept. For as rote and conventional as the story is, I was impressed with how unique the filmmakers made the movie's world to be. Now, it does still feature the usual dystopian themes like robots surveilling citizens in a Big Brother kind of way, and the whole aspect of the poor being marginalized is a little on the nose, but it's okay in how it's presented. They help add more weight to the story in showing how dangerous Lincoln City is for both Connor and Bhavani. I do wish this sequel expanded more on the lore established in the previous movie. All the stuff about the trust, the psych farms, and the overall history of Lincoln City feels like it was more prevalent in the previous movie. Maybe because the story in this movie is more urgent by comparison, but at least this one is visually on par with the first. The action scenes are also fun when they do pop up. While they don't last very long, they are flashy, violent, and intense, and it's cool to see Connor and Garrett take more advantage of their powers here in more creative ways compared to how they did last time. The special effects and the budget in general feels like a big step up from part 1. The Guardian robots and the new canine units feel more plentiful and menacing and look great with how they move. It's not easy to pull off animating robots without CGI making them look janky, but the animators did a good job with them here. It's unfortunate that the movie looks as good as it does and yet feels so lacking in substance with its story. It sort of evolves from the first movie in terms of scale, but it just feels too safe and familiar to bother getting invested in it all that much. Overall, Code 8 Part 2 is a mediocre sequel to a mediocre movie that neither fails or succeeds in what it does, and as a sequel meant to move things forward, that's not in the best position to be in. If you liked the first movie and were excited to see how the sequel would progress the series, you may want to temper your expectations a bit, because it's more or less the same story with a different coat of paint. If you can accept this going into it, or like robots and dystopian themes in general, you might enjoy checking it out. As a Canadian, it pains me to say how disappointed I am in this movie's mediocrity, because we don't get many original movies of our own on this scale that aren't just filmed in Canada and declared an American production. The idea is amazing, and there is some potential with its world building and action, but the sequel's cardboard story and characters ultimately squander the second chance that the sequel was supposed to be. What did you think about this movie? Do you think it was a step forward or backward for the series? Or maybe not a step at all? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of Code 8 Part 2. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part where next time I review the American sci-fi drama, Spaceman. Bye bye!